Welcome to Biztech's Marketing Show. Our guest for today is Rishi Bedi. He's the Managing Director for Asia Pacific at InMobi. InMobi is a leading provider of marketing and monetization technologies, reaching more than 1 billion consumers around the world. Now, to tell us more, welcome to the show, Rishi.
Thank you so much, Brian. Great to be here.
Give us an overview of InMobi and the vision that led to its founding.
Sure. As you mentioned, InMobi is a leading provider of content, monetization, and marketing solutions. On one side, we solve for the marketers and advertisers' needs to engage with the right consumers, identify the right audiences, and deliver very relevant messages to them through mobile advertising on their smartphones. On the other side, we have a content discovery platform, and one of the key examples is Glance, which is very large in India and Indonesia markets, and now we're expanding it across the world. It is one single surface on your lock screens, which helps consumers discover content like news, entertainment, games, sports, and a lot of other interesting experiences that they find it on their lock screen. We call it surface, or the smart surface, or screen zero of any consumer's experience.
And that's really interesting. What is it? So you mentioned India and Indonesia, and obviously they're very significant markets for you. What is your footprint like in the region?
That's a great question, Brian. So India, we've been operating for a few years now, and we have already reached a scale of about 200 million monthly active users. And these are opted-in users. So that means these consumers are spending a lot of time on their smartphones, engaging with the content that we're sharing with them. And this is curated for each consumer. In Indonesia, we've started very recently, less than 2 years ago, and we've already reached a scale of 20 to 25 million. So overall, between these two countries, we are roughly 250 plus minus million, and expanding very rapidly across the globe with our recent investments.
Now, and I'm going to come back to your recent investments later on in the interview, but tell us who some of your clients are, and could you share some success stories on how you've helped your clients engage better with customers and also to acquire customers?
Sure, Brian, our clients are any large brand in the area of consumer packaged goods or FMCG. It could be an automobile client, all the leading brands. It could be an OEM or a technology manufacturer, so smartphone owner manufacturers or computer manufacturers. It could be a banking client, any large brand that wants to engage with consumers and want to deliver relevant messaging in a very, very precise, accurate, and meaningful manner that also creates some value for consumers. These are our clients. And we spend a lot of time with some of the tier one, the biggest brands in the market. You could pick up any name from the CPG industry. It could be somebody like P&G or Unilever, or even brands like Coca-Cola. A lot of these brands work with us and engage with us and leverage our solutions and products.
Now, could you share an interesting success story or case study of how you worked with a client on a specific campaign or to address specific issues?
Yeah, there are brilliant case studies. And if I was to just pick one or two examples, one could be an example where there is a brand which focuses on, let me name the brand, that's Lifebuoy, which focuses on a lot of personal hygiene and personal care. And during COVID pandemic, I think the brand wanted to create awareness in Indonesia and some very remote areas of Indonesia to create awareness about practices that will help consumers prevent themselves from the pandemic. And the brand wanted to not only talk about their own product, but they wanted to educate the consumers. And we identified areas in Indonesia. We picked up signals from our own platform on where the pandemic awareness levels are the lowest. And then Lifebuoy delivered very interesting and meaningful educational messages to them. And also things like, hey, the practice, what's the frequency? How do you prevent what's the required frequency of hand wash? How else do you prevent? What's the distance you should keep? So in the early days of the pandemic, some of this awareness was very, very low in remote areas. And we help the brand deliver messages. Similarly, there are other brands that want to engage with consumers and provide some value add, like a product sample, or they want to share some more values to the consumers. And we do that. We accurately help them precisely target and also deliver very innovative video messages, creative, rich media messages.
Now, you've been named as one of the most innovative companies globally. How did you earn that reputation? What's in your DNA? What's that secret sauce?
I would say it's a combination of the technological innovation that goes inside our organization and a culture of being more, innovative or experimental with testing new stuff. So it's a combination of those two things. I think culturally, we are an organization that promotes a lot of freedom with autonomy, and people have the ability and they feel, more open about sharing new ideas, testing new concepts, and that helps bring a lot of disruption within the organization. And on the other side, there's so much of investment into our product, engineering, technological stacks across the organization. And the product engineers and the managers, I think, and the data science guys invest so much time in bringing out disruptive products and solutions for the industry. So it's a combination of those two, and our vision to continuously keep an eye on the shifting market trends and evolving fast. I think our industry is changing very fast. The advertising industry is moving very, very fast, and there are some changes I can talk about as you ask me more questions. But those are some things that really sit in the core bed of earning that title a few years ago.
Now, I want to start really with asking you around questions around a survey that you recently conducted entitled The Future of Mobile Advertising in Tackling Data and Identity Deprecation. Tell us, perhaps you could share some key insights from this research.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a study we conducted along with Forrester. And basically, we were trying to understand through the study on how the recent changes in the industry have impacted both not just the consumer behavior or mindset, but also how is it how the advertising ecosystem and publisher ecosystem is evolving or catching up with these changes, because things have changed significantly. Now, there is a lot of evolution that has happened in the last few years, and two key trends that are emerging very clearly are the mobile first thinking, as well as the trust and transparency vector. And there's too much of innovation that has happened in these two areas. One is the spends on mobile have actually crossed more than 50% in markets like India, Southeast Asia, and even Australia and New Zealand markets. So that shows that the amount of time that is being spent by consumers on their smartphone devices is high, that we already knew. But also the advertising spends are moving more and more towards the mobile side. Why it's important for us to know is that the entire mobile first thinking drives innovation, and anything around technology or any other innovation is driven from a mobile first mindset. It could be the interesting formats that we use to deliver messages. It might be the ability to transparently or in an automated manner deliver ads. We call it programmatic marketing. Some of these things have evolved. Now, there are a lot of interesting things around how the recent changes in the privacy or regulatory environment are impacting the consumers. And there's a very high amount of awareness with consumers. They are far more aware about how their data is going to be treated, or they're sensitive about not sharing their data. And similarly, there are interesting learnings around how advertisers and publishers are catching up with these changes. And we can go in deeper into any of these areas that you want to know about.
How can brands improve marketing strategies and reach out to audiences while at the same time respecting data privacy at the same time? So
Sure.
Really, it's a dichotomy, right? On one hand, you want to improve your strategies to target better. On the other hand, there is a regulatory framework as well as concerns by the consumers themselves that their data should be respected and protected?
Yeah, absolutely. I like that question. There are too many changes and very fast in the regulatory environment. So there are both from a government or a states or countries markets standpoint, but also from technological platforms standpoint. For example, Apple announced the deprecation of their identifiers that were used by the advertisers and marketers till about a year ago. Some of these changes and also a higher amount of awareness with consumers around their data privacy has actually created new challenges for marketers. But at the same time, we're seeing that the ad spends continue to grow in the digital and the mobile ecosystem. Now, of course, the advertisers need to start thinking data first or privacy first. They would need to leverage the available data pools, or they would need to work with partners to build very strong audience or consumer intelligence while keeping a very careful outlook for not outlook towards the privacy concerns of consumers. Now, I'll give you an example. Advertisers have tools like curated marketplaces that they use. In the absence of identifiers, they could leverage curated marketplaces that are alternate methods to engage with the consumers, relevant consumers. Another example is use of data or first-party data partnerships. And these are a couple of examples that I want to give in that same part is InMobi has partnerships with Gojek, and Gojek is a very large platform in Southeast Asia. And also we have telco partnerships. One example is Telkomsel in Indonesia. Some of these audiences are available to marketers and advertisers to leverage. Now, how do they ensure that they're also being careful about the consumer's privacy concerns, right? And that is being solved currently by a lot of marketers by being very, very transparent and open about how they would be sharing their data, the consumer's data. Like when consumers share their data, how would they be treating it? How would firstly, they need to take a consent. As long as I, as a brand, share with my consumer what is the value I'm going to create for them when they share that data with me, I think consumers are very happy. It's very simple as a consumer using a website, and then to go further or to get relevant content on that website, they ask for their email ID. And those consumers who understand that by sharing my email ID, I'm going to get more relevant content for me. There's a value exchange. Similarly, marketers and advertisers need to have that very transparent conversation with consumers around how their data would be protected, and also share some sort of a value with them.
So Rishi, I'm going to give you two scenarios, and this is related to a regulatory framework and marketing and two different countries. So on one hand of the spectrum, you have somebody like Australia, which has probably one of the stronger privacy legislation in the Asia Pacific region. And then let's look at somebody like Vietnam, probably less rigid in terms of its privacy regulations. How do marketers then juggle this in their campaigns?
So every market or every country interprets data in a different manner. So what is private information or personally identifiable information has a different definition and interpretation in each market. So one of the important things is for any marketer or any organization, enterprise for that matter, not just a marketer, to have a very clear understanding and process and policies in place internally to interpret these regulations in each country, and then engage with their advertising or engage into marketing and advertising practices based on that interpretation. So for example, an identifier or an Android ID for that matter, if, for example, that's an identifier that could be considered a PII in some markets, but it is not a PII in the other market. So very deep understanding of org-wide privacy first approach. That means everybody in the organization, every key decision maker in the organization should start from privacy first approach, and then set up processes and policies towards solving for that.
Okay, so that's a very different methodology. A privacy first as opposed to a customer acquisition first strategy. Big shift in thinking.
It is led by consumers. Consumers are far more aware about their data and also sensitive about their data sharing. And if we really want to have a relationship with consumers as brands, we need to respect what consumers are thinking. And that is respecting their privacy and creating a value exchange with them. And that's how I think brands will continue to thrive while focusing on their advertising objectives.
Okay, so then taking what you've just said to heart, and what you said earlier about in some markets, mobile advertising is now 50% or more.
Mm-hmm.
What is the future of brands and personalizations, therefore, in a privacy-first world? Where is that money, that 50%? How is that being deployed?
Well, most brands are investing a lot of effort into building their own understanding of data and audiences. So they have their own relatively smaller pools of first-party data, the data that they have accumulated or collected through direct point of contacts. That could be a brand's website, for that matter, or brand's mobile application. So brands do have some sort of first-party data that they have. However, those pools are much smaller. And that's why some of the larger enterprises and evolved ones are investing a lot of effort in building larger pools of first-party data. And this could be in the form of, it could start from partnering with a consumer data platform provider. We call it a CDP in short. So you work and identify your own CDP provider. But CDP is just a platform that needs to be filled with information and data that can be used by brands in the following months or years. And now, in order to build more intelligence, there are examples. One is similar to what I mentioned earlier, leveraging partnerships. I gave you the example of Gojek or Telkomsel, or there are other such data assets that they could partner with. And InMobi works with some brands for that. The other is deployment of first-party relationship development with consumers. So look, I'm the brand, and I talk to a consumer who has shown affinity with my brand. They've shown engagement, and I also know that they have bought my products in past. This is my time to take my relationship to the next level and share that value, be very transparent, and then see if they consent to share their data with me so that I can continue to have meaningful conversation with them over the next few years. These are some things that brands are doing already. And I see some of them are, some CPG brands have really been very innovative and evolved in these spaces.
Okay, speaking of innovative and looking ahead, what are some key trends that you're seeing for the rest of 2022 and 2023 in the mobile advertising space?
So as I said, there are two things that I continue to see more evolution on. Mobile is the first screen or first point of engagement for consumers and the brands. Internet is first experienced by about 40 to 50 million users every year through their smartphones. That's their first introduction to internet. That the amount of time that is spent on mobile by consumers is almost 5+ hours in our regions in some markets now. The ad spending is already moving towards mobile. So, and the formats and the experiences in terms of rewarded videos or very innovative rich media creators, the messaging has evolved significantly on the smartphones. So what we continue to see is further evolution in the mobile advertising space in all of these. And this is a huge opportunities that brands have to continue engaging with these consumers that are not necessarily on laptops or desktops, or they're not looking at the other medium. They're spending time on their personal devices. Those are smartphones. So more evolution in all of those things. The other is, of course, around content discovery. I think in past, content was being discovered by consumers with intent. They would go into their smartphones, they would figure out they want to play a game, or they want to engage with a video on let's say YouTube, or they want to read news on some website. Now content discovery is based on content is being served to them, in a curated manner. Even before they start to search for this content, that is being delivered on their smartphones and lock screen. And Glance is a brilliant example, but I also know that Apple has announced very recently about changing or reimagining their lock screen surface as well, which is great because we've been doing it for a few years for Android devices in many markets. And now Apple wanting to do this is a great reaffirmation of, hey, this is where the consumer shift is happening. Those are things. There is, of course, programmatic advertising that will continue to evolve. More transparency, more trust, more data-driven, more privacy-first. But those are some things that I definitely see the trends shifting towards.
I want to zoom in now back on InMobi again. You're a company that's grown tremendously over the last few years. And as part of that growth, you've made around 10 acquisitions. What's the M&A strategy currently and moving forward?
Well, there are some acquisitions we have done, but if you carefully look at those acquisitions, could be Reposo, we acquired that platform. There was a platform called Shop One-on-One in India that we acquired. There's a gaming platform that we acquired. All of those acquisitions are actually to solve for only one need, and that is consumer. And consumers' experience, the need to discover new and fresh and curated content, and also the need to have seamless transactions or experience of discovering a product, learning more about it, and then hopefully do a transaction, basically adoption of that product. So all of these acquisitions are all centered around our consumer first approach, which is solving for consumers' experiences of content discovery and needs to close any product adoption or transactions seamlessly. And we continue to invest in that space and growing globally.
Now, Rishi, InMobi has got a stellar list of investors. You've got Kleiner Perkins, you've got SoftBank among your investor groups. There have also been talk about you going IPO last year. What's the funding plan moving forward, and how will this impact the next stage of InMobi's growth?
But what I can tell you is that we are investing a lot of our time, effort, and energies into solving for consumers, that also in mobile first environments. And we are seeing some very good adoption across various markets. And we are committed to expanding very fast to various markets. Beyond Asia, we are already putting in efforts, and we continue to grow and solving for both advertisers' needs, publishers' needs, but with consumer in the center and consumer as our primary focus.
Rishi, it's been a fascinating conversation. But before we leave, any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Yes, Ran, thank you. I've enjoyed having my conversation with you. Thank you for this time. I think those brands and enterprises, they should, again, as a reminder, invest a lot in privacy-first thinking and privacy-first approach, not just for their advertising and marketing objectives, but also generally for building better intelligence about their consumers. And second is, carefully, the best way is strategize your marketing towards mobile first, because the amount of possibilities that are on mobile platforms or mobile consumers are unmatched. The scale, the engagement rates, the innovation on mobile platforms. So spend more efforts on mobile, as we are seeing that the industry is already catching up. And I would urge other marketers also to look at that platforms.
Now, thank you for taking your time to be on the show, Rishi.
Thank you so much, Brian.
I'm Brian Fernandez, and we've been speaking to Rishi Bedi, the Managing Director for Asia Pacific at InMobi, on Biztech's Marketing Show. This video and podcast will be on our various platforms, as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please like and subscribe to our various platforms. Thanks again for tuning in.